All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to the Launchpad interview series. Today's topic is going to be job search in the face of economic instability. So I'm very excited about our conversation today. We're going to be sitting down with Sarah Guidone. She's a Loyola 2009 alum. So she graduated at another point of economic instability in our recent past. So welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're
Thank
looking
you.
forward to hearing about your career path and some words of wisdom that you can share with our upcoming grads. So how about you start off by telling us a little bit about your career and how you got your start?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited to connect with you guys. I love Loyola. So I am a senior project manager at the Chicago Transit Authority. Basically, the types of projects that I'm involved in are I've been in all different areas of the agency. Actually, in my career, I've worked with multiple government agencies from youth work, education, transportation, like the trades, so lots of different areas. But the type of projects I work on typically have to do with like making improvements or kind of developing the people or the structure within the organization. And I got my start on this path really by doing a lot of collaborations. So while I was in school, I worked on a research project that had people from Loyola, people from other universities, government, community-based organizations, all working together to create a program. And so I developed this skill set for kind of like being in the thick of things and trying to take a vision or an idea and like actually make it happen and turn it into something concrete. So it's led to project management and lots of different like areas in my different like types of projects in my career.
Mhm. Great. So our graduating students face a very unstable economy as they begin their job search. You're in a similar predicament when you graduated, like we mentioned, with everything that was going on in 2008 and 2009. Can you share with our students how you managed that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's probably important for me to say that for me at that time, it wasn't an option for me to kind of like move back home or like have a kind of safety net. So I definitely felt a lot of like pressure at that time to make sure that I was going to be able to like pay my bills and I also really had worked so hard while I was in school, so I really wanted to do something awesome when I graduated. Um, and what ended up happening was because there wasn't anything really clear and immediate when I graduated, I ended up kind of piecing things together. So I had worked on that research project that I mentioned, the collaboration, and I got a part-time job with them doing evaluation on the program that we had developed. And then I had another part-time job working at the Shed Aquarium doing audience research. And then I found a research fellowship that provided a little stipend. And so while I was doing the job search, I just kind of pieced things together and um, worked as much as I could. Luckily, when you're a student, like we're used to like working from the moment we wake up until like, 10 o'clock at night or something. So I kind of leveraged like the fact that I was used to being really busy and having a lot of different things going on. And then I also connected with people in my network. I did information interviews. Just asked around, had my resume tweaked by the Career Center. And yeah, so it was just kind of like doing as much as I could until something finally landed, which I think it was maybe like 4 or 5 months or something. From like May or June to like November, I got my full-time like contractor job. And that really had come from rapport that I had built with different people in the projects that I had worked on. So it was like someone that I connected with knew that I had some ability and that I was competent. And so then I got referred to be able to interview for a job. When I had 4 interviews for one position, I
Oh,
was
wow.
like, Yeah, I was like really hoping to do amazing things and not really realizing like how many hoops and hurdles there were to be able to get to that first step. So it was a good, it was a big learning experience for me.
Mhm. Yeah, it sounds like it was kind of a trial by fire, and a lot of work had to be put in on the front end. But I'm hearing you talk about you were taking advantage of opportunities that were coming along, even if they were short term, while you were waiting for a more long term opportunity to come up. And it sounded like leveraging your network was really beneficial in a lot of ways because you made these connections with people, you found out about opportunities that you could apply to, and that goodwill you were building with everyone while you were talking with them sounded like it was guiding you to some good opportunities as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I definitely, I felt this way back then, and I think it's still true that every action I was taking in my education and in the work that I was doing, like if I was if I was, the level of like quality and credibility that I put into each thing that I did added up to various like possibilities. So it was really interesting. Like that first job was like a woman who had worked in IT in a government agency, and she happened to be working with us on our project for a very specific thing, but I had just worked hard and built rapport, and so it was this like connection and stuff. So and you just don't know what's going to hit, so you got to just kind of keep going and try to also like um yeah, I had to also like adjust my expectations because I just felt like, oh, I'd worked so hard. I was like top of my class. Like there should just be something amazing. But we're really starting out at that point. People, we still have a lot to like learn, and people, yeah, they're going to be looking for you to like build credibility in the workplace.
Mhm.
Even though I had jobs, like I had a full-time job even when I was in school, but in your own field, like they're still looking for you to start somewhere.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very common experience that a lot of new grads have. I know I did whenever I graduated. That desire to jump into a full time job right from the start, and then kind of having a realization, like you said, we have to kind of manage our expectations about what's available to us and what we can access. But it sounds like you're able to pivot and see how you could build up some good experience and a good reputation with a lot of the projects and the jobs that you did before landing that big job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing that helped too is a lesson I learned like over time is that really like we talk a lot we talked a lot at Loyola about calling and purpose and like really having a strong sense of who you are. And that's not always going to be defined by your job. So I really tried to cultivate like a more well-rounded like approach to my life, and then seeing my career as a set of steps that are in line with that versus just thinking like if I don't have this specific job then I'm not doing what I'm like meant to do in my life, or I'm not being utilized. There were always other projects I could do. I was involved a lot with the arts and communities, my neighborhood and stuff like that. So I tried to also like use my energy, channel my energy into other places while this was developing and kind of taking shape.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So, not letting your job define who you are, but letting your job be one facet of who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see how that would be a really powerful coping mechanism, in addition to just really helping you navigate that job search. I can imagine how exhausting it could be seeing so much of your identity in a job and struggling to find it, especially in a time when there just aren't as many job opportunities available.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And to put your resume out there, you're one of how many applicants, and I had limited experience even though I felt like I was really prepared. I was really lucky. I had worked for a law office for 5 years. I worked on that research project for 2 years. I had done presentations. I had got great grades. So I was like, okay, everything is really there, but it didn't necessarily all come together quickly, or for me to have like just put a resume out there. There are lots of really good resumes. So what else can I do to try to connect with the industry that I care about, and the opportunities, things that are happening in our city?
Mhm. So can you tell us a little bit about how you came into the job that you have now?
Yeah. So, like I said, I had done a lot of work with, so my first job out of school, so I had done a lot of work with government. And my first job out of school was kind of like a progression from this collaborative research project where we had developed some youth programming. And this first job out of school was working with all these government agencies who were trying to improve their youth programs. And so it was in my field that I was interested in. I was interested in youth. I was interested in making things happen. And I ended up doing a lot of, I guess, what people would often consider like organizational development. So I worked with people all throughout these government agencies, in communities, at the executive level, and was really trying to be a glue and a catalyst to like make this happen. Like, okay, we want to improve youth programs, but what does that even really mean? Like, there's so many like realities that we have to work through and navigate to be able to actually achieve an abstract goal like that. So I developed a skill set of really being able to work with a wide range of people and communicate up and down an organization to try to move things forward. So that was a contract job. And in 2011, the contract ended.
Mm,
Actually, the grant funding for the project, because of the economic recession, didn't come through for the renewal that they expected.
mm,
So they were expecting like 5 more years of funding. And because of the way that investments worked out, the project really had to like narrow and shift. So I ended up um, unemployed for like 2 weeks. Thankfully, like because the work that I had done, someone that I had been working with had gotten another contract with the CTA, and she was beginning to do organizational development with them. She was beginning to assess like the strengths and opportunities, and she realized, okay, well, we need someone like with my skill sets. Like, we need someone who can go to the field, go out to the bus garages, like figure out what's going on, learn about the strengths, try to tap into things. And so it started a really fascinating, like diverse career for me of just, I had never worked in the transportation industry, but I had developed those skills through the work that I had done with these other projects. So I knew how to connect with people and gather information and try to come up with ideas and structures and plans to really like achieve a vision. And in the CTA, I've worked with like HR and hiring. I've worked with the trades like construction, plumbing, and infrastructure. I've worked in bus maintenance and um, rail ops, like all these different departments, and it's been really cool. There's a lot of like things to learn, and I've tried to see my skill set. Like, I've tried to look at what I bring to the table in terms of like a skill set and also a passion and a type of like content that I like. And I like challenging myself to see like, how much can I expand that?
mhm. Great. So it sounds like, you taking stock of your skills and your experience, it kind of unlocked this door to consider fields or jobs that you wouldn't even thought about going into. Like you mentioned, who would have thought to go into CTA, with that kind of skill set. That's very impressive.
Yeah, it's really cool. There were a few things actually that I did when I was a student at Loyola that I think kind of helped me with that. Number one was going through some of the like career development programs where we do like personality tests and we
Mm,
learn about who we are in the context of teams and groups and society. So I had spent a lot of time thinking about what I bring to the table in a project and like what my role is and I how I contribute. And then also, one of our professors had us create like a log of all of our responsibilities, like at our various jobs. And I wish I could say I've been like maintaining it for 10 years, but it's like kind of, it's kind of like, I do it as best I can, but it helps me to really have that like more well-grounded sort of self-confidence in these are the things I've been responsible for. This is what I bring to the table. In my years of doing hiring, which I've done a lot of hiring for the CTA and for that other project that I was on, we do a lot of behavior-based interviewing. So we ask people, give us an example of a time when you did this, when you used this skill. So it was helpful for me to have spent so much time on that like self-reflection and like awareness of what it was that I had how my experiences fit into the broader context of jobs that I was interested in or the role that I wanted to play in my field, sort of like my identity and passion. It really helped me to be adaptable and to see the ways that something so different, like something so different can actually be a great fit.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned the personality tests and things, and for the viewers out there, today we call that our career self-assessment workshop, or our seesaw. So it is one of the elements that we do continue to offer, and like you said, it's a great way. It sounds like for you, it really helped you to get a well-rounded view of yourself and how you might interact with other people and types of jobs.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
Hmm.
So if we think back to your initial post-grad job search, would you do anything differently if you were conducting your job search now? Or was there any element about your job search that you feel like just didn't really work out the way that you wanted it to? And what did you learn from that?
Well, I think the thing that I would definitely make sure was part of my formula if I was doing it now would be with your resume. I mean, nowadays there are algorithms and computers and your resume gets plugged into a machine and they're looking for keywords. Obviously it doesn't get plugged into a machine like
It kind of does. Be fed into like an ATS,
right,
perhaps.
just like that. Yes, like totally, totally like a punch card.
Right.
So, so, but that is a piece of the puzzle that is outside of my realm of expertise, but I do like know that it's a resource. It's an important piece of the puzzle to get your resume at least seen in a in an organization. So I know that so that would be one thing I would do is like seek out some knowledge and maybe resources or people that I knew who have a good grasp on what a resume looks like that can sort of get through that first step as well. Because the way that we did it back when I started, you just wanted to make sure your resume, like the sentence started with a verb, supervised this, assessed this, but now that's expanded. You want your sentences for all your bullet points to say what you did and then sort of why you did it or what was the what was the outcome. So I supervised these people in order to do whatever. And so um we all speak our own language from our own experiences, but I think it would be it would be a starting point for me is to try to figure out like what are the common words that then would be like translated to an organization so that they can understand what I already know.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's a big thing that we talk about in career services is that you want to be speaking the language of the field that you're trying to get into. So it is that question of how do I translate my experiences into that language. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great tip. I agree that I feel like that's much more common now than it was 10 years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah. And it's for me, it's like it seems awkward and strange, but it's just part of the process. So it's like sort of, just do it. Don't
Hmm.
get too goofy about it. Just go
Yeah,
for it.
yeah. And it gets easier every
Yeah.
time. Like the more you do it, the easier it gets. That's the good news.
Yeah. I would still too like um do those information interviews. Like that would be something I would definitely continue to do. Because even though, I met with people that it's not like I met with them with the expectation that I would get a job, and they didn't think that I was asking them for a job, but they would have insight or some tips, or I feel like I would just learn a little more like each time I would talk to someone, and it helped me again just kind of continue to like for everything to sort of take shape.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, because they're the ones who are sort of keyed into that industry. So they'll have those really current tips for
Yeah.
getting into the industry, or who's hiring possibly, or what an entry level job could look like. It's a very powerful tool, that informational interview.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Especially too, because there's only so many jobs we really know about when we're in
Mhm.
school or when we're a child. Like, we don't know the intricacies of all the different entry level, or even when you think about an organizational chart, all the different roles, all the different types of skill sets and things like that. Like, there's just so much out there that we don't really like, there's no way we would know because we just haven't really interfaced with it.
Absolutely. And especially when a lot of jobs have so many different titles, it's just hard to even know. Yeah. And those
Yeah.
informational interviews, that's a great way to get familiar with what those titles and jobs could be.
Yeah, absolutely. And too, like a title could also be it could mean very different things depending on the type of organization.
Hmm.
So, you know, some of our departments have a bunch of directors, but it's because of the role that they play. Whereas you could have a department that's much bigger or that's spread out in a different way. And so they have like one director. And so
Hmm.
understanding like, or if you were working in a small agency or a smaller group, like what some of those titles would be, they just mean different things depending on the work that's being done or depending on the organization and the scope. So kind of it did help me to really my head around like my first job was like a program coordinator. And so I was like, okay, I'm in this role. And I started realizing that this coordinator level had these types of like, this was sort of the scope. And this is what I could bring to the table. And this was like a good fit. And then realizing, okay, well, the next step up would be, doing project management or doing,
Hmm.
consulting or things like that. So it did help so much to just get that exposure because otherwise, like,
Hmm.
how would you even know?
Right. So it sounds like it's a combination of doing these informational interviews, trying to gather some information on the front end, but at the same time, you kind of have to do the job in order to learn more about the field. So you have to kind of do both and and not be too afraid to kind of jump in.
Yeah, I was really lucky in my work because my whole career has been just so much collaboration that I often get a bird's eye view of an organization. I remember even so CTA has like 10,000 employees. And I remember when I first started there, I got a printout of all the organizational charts and I like taped them to the wall in my office so I could just like see where it starts and where it ends and try to wrap my head around like all the different pieces and all the different roles. But some careers don't necessarily interface with everybody in the organization. So it's going to unfold like a bit differently, and having that like curiosity beyond like our specific tasks can then help like give us a sense of like what the next steps could be. Because
Hmm.
when you're starting out, you're just doing one little piece, but there's so much room to grow and there's so much growth in that first 5 years. Like after you graduate, it was like for me, there were just things just kept going and going. And I think that really once you get into the organization and people realize that you work hard and you're dependable and credible, then a lot of things can come from that. And so it
Hmm.
will take on its own life. Um, at least, it has for me, which has been like such a blessing.
Yeah, that's a great tip. So it's not just, always thinking about what is the next step up for me, but having that curiosity mindset, getting a feel for what are the positions out there, even if they're things that I am not initially interested in, perhaps if I learn more about it, something might come up for me where I'm like, oh, well, maybe I want to explore this a little bit more. Yeah, that's a great tip.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, great. So, as an alum with a few years of experience working in the nonprofit sector, what skills have been most helpful for you, and what skills would you recommend that graduating students make sure that they develop?
That's a really good question. I think for me, the first thing that really comes to mind is kind of like the culture shock that you go through being in school versus being in a workplace or like the real world. I think we used to like to call it when we were in school. So the pace and the process is different in those two environments. I remember when I was in school, we were developing this youth program that was meant to be a model for the whole nation of like youth programs. This was supposed to be a really strong mentoring model. So we would edit and revise so many different documents. I remember it was totally normal to have like version 14. Like it was just such a process of really analyzing and getting really engaged in so many different elements of the work. And while that happened to me in some areas in my first job and even in my job now, I was surprised when there would be times when I would produce something like a report or a proposal or something like that, and someone would look at it and be like, "Okay, that's good," and I was just like, "Uh, okay." Like it was so strange that to realize like no, you're in a job that you have proven you're qualified for and people are counting on you to just do that job, like do it well, do it credibly. It didn't mean that my work didn't get checked, but it just wasn't the same process that like when I was in school. So for me, I it taught me a lot of like patience and self-confidence, and also like regulating myself a little bit too of like, okay, if I have all this nervous energy because I'm used to producing something that gets redlined, 10 times, then, I have to look at what I've learned and then do my own quality checks and then like take a deep breath and move on to the next thing. So it was definitely like an adjustment. So I think like that kind of like um yeah, adjustment to the changing culture, and just know that like in the workplace, yeah, they're just counting on you to do your job and do it well. You're not always going to get as much like supervision or coaching and stuff like that, but it
Mhm.
made me stronger. It made me more confident in my own like contributions and like what I do. So I sort of like took what got me there and then tried to like piece that together, wrap my head around it, that like um I was in this spot for a reason,
Mhm.
not just to learn but to contribute and to make that impact. And then I just tried to like learn from all my experiences, just trying to like use everything, even like the ups and the downs. I mean, government by its nature has all this like ups and downs and waves, and you've got administration changes and budget changes, and obviously with everything that is going on, there's crisis and emergencies and things like that. So it's not like when we're in school where we progress forward, you get an A, you get a, you go to the next level. My career in some ways has gone like up and down, and I moved sideways and into different types of work that looks different. And so just trying to really like again like think about my purpose as a person, as a whole person, and not just in this one moment, with a career, but looking at all those moments of challenge and all those moments where I'm uncomfortable as a way that I'm getting stronger. And yeah, I feel like I learned a lot. Probably the biggest thing though too was like um, to get like mentorship. So to connect with people that I admired that had um, been through some of the things that I was um, going through, or that maybe like displayed characteristics that I really wanted to continue to like cultivate, like patience, which I was not very patient when I was used to just working hard and getting things done, and and a class is like a semester long. So you're doing something, you're seeing through the end. And um, the projects I work on now, like the project I work on now at the CTA, I'm in charge of all the records. We have this big warehouse space, and there's like 30,000 boxes of paper. And so it's not like, now these projects are way more complex, and like I am looking at goals years in the future and looking at culture change that I'm doing today that I hope will pay off for years to come. And I'm just planting seeds. So building up like my own identity and my own sense of like what I want to do, it helped so much, because you just don't get the same like instant gratification um, all the time. And sometimes those mentors that were the best fit for me weren't in my organization. Like sometimes it was like someone a professor that I had, or someone that I met in an information interview that I just clicked with. And so I would just stay in touch with them and kind of give them updates on my life and my progress. And we would sort of reflect on what those things meant. Um, it definitely helped me like channel my energy and my like focus, and try to like it always helped to put things in that like bigger context. um yeah.
Yeah. Well, great. Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Yeah, thank you, this was great. I really yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for watching as well. Please be sure to check out the other interviews that we have on hand for our Launchpad series. And we hope you all have a great rest of your day. And thank you again, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right. Goodbye.